So this is part of one of our discussions about the fundamental principles of Spiritism. We have already talked about God. Marcel has talked about God. And we're going to talk about the existence of spirits, but also about matter and touch a little bit on fluids. Other talks are going to talk about reincarnation, the multitude of inhabited worlds, and about mediumship or communicability with spirits. So we're going to begin this discussion with a question that people know I like a lot. It's question 27 from the Spirit's book, where Kardec asks to the superior spirits, there are then two general elements of the universe, matter and spirit. To which the response is yes, and above them both is God, the creator, parent of all things. God, matter, and spirit constitute the principle of all that exists, the universal Trinity. So, it's very hard for us to know understand the properties of God as we have already discussed. So, we know that God is the eternal source of all that there is, the supreme intelligence, and He created matter and spirit. We're going to set this aside for now, and what we want to discuss today are the properties of matter, what matter is, what are their attributes, the types and transformations that matter can undergo, and talk about a little bit about fluids, different types of fluids. We're going to try to do the same thing with spirits, and talk about what they are, their attributes, their origin, and how they interact with matter. So let's begin talking about matter. In question 21, Kardec asks, like God, has matter existed for all eternity, or was it created at some given point in time? So God is eternal, right? So what about all that there is in the universe? All the matter, all the galaxies and planets? And the response is, only God knows. However, there is one fact that reason should point out, that God, the ultimate paradigm of love and charity, is never inactive. No matter how far back in time you may imagine the beginning of God's action, can you conceive Him ever idle, even for a single moment? So, and that touches on the difference of being eternal and being immortal, right? So God is eternal. He has no beginning, He has no end. And if you think that God created matter, it has a starting point at some point in time. But since God is eternal and has been creating ever since, you could potentially say that since He exists, He is also have been creating matter. So there should always have been both matter and spirit, which is kind of hard for us to grasp our minds around. But and then he goes on and asks, matter is generally defined as being that which makes an impression on our senses, that is, which is impenetrable. Are these definitions accurate? And the answer from the Spirit is yes. From your point of view, they are accurate, because you can only provide a definition according to what you know. Matter exists in states that are unfamiliar to you. It may be, for instance, so ethereal and subtle that it makes no impressions on your senses. It is still matter, even though it will not be such for you, right? And we know that there are a few states of matter that are familiar to us, and the difference between those states is basically the amount of energy that you add to the substance to take them from one state to the other, right? We know today that there are many more different states of matter other than those four that are the common ones we know about. And that matter doesn't only apply that variability in states to the common matter that we see in our physical world, but also to the matter on the spiritual side. And we're going to get in a bit more details later on in the presentation. So then Kardec says, if that definition is not very accurate, what is the definition that you can give me of matter? What is matter? And the response is very succinct but very, very interesting. It says, matter is the lasso that bonds the spirit. It is the instrument that the spirit uses and upon which, at the same time, it acts. So the spirit uses, so the whole definition is centered about the spirit. So he asks about matter, but then the definition goes about the intelligent principle. So matter is just the instrument that intelligent principle uses, and to act upon that same thing, matter. That's a bit confusing, but it's going to be a little bit more clear when we go through the presentation. And the next question is then, okay, is matter composed of one or several elements? And we always talk that Spiritism goes along with science, right? And that's a type of question that should be easy for us to respond, because now we know currently that we have several, more than 100 different elements in which we organize in the periodic table. But the response to the Spirits is a little bit surprising. It says only one simple element. The bodies that you see as simple are not truly elements, but transformations of basic matter. And then, how does that reconcile with the knowledge that we have today on science? How does that can be supported by what we know today? Let's think about a glass of water, right? So what constitutes the water that's there, or the water molecules that are made of atoms, right? But what are the atoms made of? The idea of atom goes back more than 2,500 years, when Democritus and Leucippus thought that if you begin breaking down a piece of matter in two, you get at some point to a particle that's the indivisible portion of matter, the smallest piece that can be divided, and that he called atom, without parts, or indivisible. After that, and like in the later 18th century, in the 19th century, Rutherford actually figured out that the atom is not this solid ball of mass, but it's actually a huge hole in which you have a nuclei, and electrons flowing around it. And most of this area, of this space, is actually empty. So, and then with the difference on the composition of the nucleus of the atom, you have these several elements for which now we have represented in our periodic table. For the example we're giving, those two elements are the hydrogen and the oxygen that compose the water. Let's get the simplest one, right, which is the hydrogen. So the atom of hydrogen is made of one single electron and one single proton in the nucleus. So that thing that was indivisible before, you can now see that you can divide in two pieces, right? And if you look down on the proton, which is in the center of this structure, you can, science has figured out that it's actually not a solid thing. It can be subdivided in subatomic particles, in that case of the proton, 2 up quarks and 1 down quark. So, investigating the nature of matter, scientists figure out that there is a whole periodic table of subatomic particles, not only the quarks, but fermions and leptons and bosons that make up matter. Right? So, if you go digging deeper and deeper, you will find smaller and smaller particles that constitute what we call the regular matter. All of this is well and good for microscopic things, for subatomic particles and interatomic spaces. And the laws that regulate the interactions of these things is represented in quantum physics. But if you go to the macroscopic scale, stars, planets, galaxies, these laws don't apply, and the laws that actually apply and are useful are the general relativity, where the fundamental principle is gravity. So usually you don't have, whenever the laws of this quantum physics are applicable, the laws of gravity don't really work, and the contrary is also true. So there's a situation where you could apply to both. That only really becomes important when you have a situation that's very, very tiny with a huge amount of mass, which is, for instance, black holes in the beginning of our universe. For those two situations and some other situations, the scientists had to think about a unifying theory, a theory that could describe what happens both in the microscopic level and on the super mega microscopic level. And that theory was called later as the string theory, in which a hypothetical constituent of matter, which is a piece of string, is what constitutes everything. And depending on how that string vibrates, if it vibrates on a certain frequency or on different frequencies, if it's open versus a closed string, it will generate these subatomic particles that will combine in different ways to form the particles, that will combine to form elements, that will combine to form molecules, that will combine to form proteins, and lipids and carbohydrates that will form our physical bodies. So, in that way, when you look now, that completely backs up what has been written on the Spirit's book on 1856, where there is evidence now, at least theoretical, because they haven't found that string yet, that everything that is matter in the universe, everything that constitutes the known universe, is made of one single thing. And vibrations and combinations of these different things give origins to all that there is. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, fluids. What is a fluid? It's kind of intuitive to us to think of a fluid when we see water flowing and air. Those are types of fluid that are very characteristic to us. If you look at the physics book, and this comes from Wikipedia actually, the definition of a fluid is a substance that continually deforms or flows under any applied shear stress. It's a substance that cannot resist any pressure that's put on it. Fluids display properties such as non-resisting, permanent deformation, and the ability to flow, which is the ability to occupy the form of anything that is put into. So if you drop water into a cup, it will take the form of that cup, right, of the container. So it seems it's easy for us to tell which is a fluid, which things are fluid or which things are solid, for instance, like this chair. Let me give you an example. This is a picture of a highway, and we have there, the pavement is made of asphalt, of bitumen, right? Whoever I step on one of those pieces knows how painful it is it really feels like a solid matter. And I ask you, is that what you think that is solid, or is bitumen a fluid? I know it's a tricky question because I have this big question, what is a fluid, that I'm leading you to say it's not, but it's really not. And the bitumen that looks to be a solid piece of matter was proved to be actually a highly viscous fluid. An experiment that began in 1927, a professor in Brisbane put a piece of bitumen in a funnel, and every 10 years a drop goes down into the beaker, demonstrating that it's really a highly viscous fluid, and they actually were able to measure that it's 230 billion times the viscosity of water. So something that seems us, and that's the substance in which our cars run, in which most of our things are built of, and that's a fluid, right? So when in the Spirit's book we talk about condensations of matter and fluidic construction in the spiritual plane, you can see something ranging from the properties or lightness of air, which is a fluid, to this, which is pretty much seen to be a solid matter, through a property which is basically viscosity, right? So if you go into the literature, spiritual literature, to ask for the definition of fluids, André Luiz defines this very well. He says, we define fluid of this or that origin as any body which molecules invariably yield to the slightest pressure, moving over one another when retained inside a container agent, spreading apart when not in confinement. We have hence liquid fluids, elastic fluids, gaseous fluids, as well as those previously called imponderable fluids, represented by the phenomena of light, heat, and others. This definition is pretty much similar to the one we can find in physics books today of what a fluid is. And it actually talks about things that at that time were not considered to be fluids or recognized to be even matter, like light or heat, which now are recognized to have their counterpart as particle, as much as energy or waves. Everything good so far? So that introduction was to talk about a specific type of fluid, which is the universal fluid. So what is the universal fluid? André Luiz also defines the universal fluid as being the divine plasma. The universal fluid is the breath of the Creator, the nervous force of the All-Wise. In these primordial elements, suns and galaxies, worlds and beings vibrate and live, like fishes in the ocean. It is the elementary constituent of matter in which all of us are immersed. And through this immersion, this transmits elements, forces throughout the galaxy. It connects all of us, not only from the physical aspect, but also the spiritual and mental aspect also. The nature of this fluid is not entirely known to us, but we know from some of the properties that it has. It possesses the laws that govern the transformation of matter, because all matter comes from this universal fluid. So whatever properties matter acquires has to come from these original primordial elements. It has states that range from imponderability to condensation or materialization. It differs from the matter as we know it by some of its essential properties, but is the source that all the matter that is. It is the primordial matter. It permeates all things and beings in creation, and it's very important. This characteristic, it is intermediary between spirit and matter, because if you look at property number 3 here, it is not exactly matter, because it has some properties that are different, but it's the origin of all that's material, right? So it's something in between spirit and matter. And through its successive transformations and combinations with matter and under the action of the spirits, it is able to produce the infinity variation of things of which we know but a small part. Very important to clarify, when you talk about the spiritual realm and the material realm or the spiritual world, we use this term to say, they are in the spiritual world, we are in the material world. But even in the spiritual world, things that are there, they are material, right? The term spiritual fluids refers to the fluidic atmosphere in which the spiritual beings live. Although it's denominated spiritual, they are still matter, since it is derived from the universal fluid. There is nothing truly spiritual except the spirit itself, the soul and the intelligence principle. In a comparison, it would be the matter of the spiritual world. So when in Osula, André Luiz described those buildings, the aerobus, all the ministries, all that spiritual construction that's on the spiritual world is matter, but it's a different type of matter. It's so rarified that to us, all of that is ethereal, and we call them the spiritual world. But to them, is as solid as this wall is for us, depending on the evolution and of the intention of the spirits. Is that good and clear? Okay. So, we have understood that universal fluid is the source of all matter, right? So, from transformations of this universal fluid, we have all the common regular matter, the inorganic matter, let's call it. But the universal fluid also gives origin to a specific type of matter that has properties that is called the vital fluid or vital principle. It is matter, but the properties are such that when combined with inorganic matter, it gives the quality of being alive to that matter. It animates the matter per se. So our physical bodies, let's say the difference between our body the way they are now and 10 days after we die, our physical bodies have the same type of atoms. There's carbon, there's nitrogen, there's oxygen, as this table has. But now we are alive, and then we will be just like inorganic matter. The difference in those two cases is in one, now we are infused with this additional type of matter, which is the vital fluid, that gives the property of matter of being alive. Okay? So, and this comes up in the Spirit's book on question 61 when they ask, is there anything between the matter, is there any difference between the matter of organic and inorganic bodies? And they say, yeah, they're the same. The only difference is that in inorganic bodies, the matter is given life. And the next logical question is, well, what gives life to matter? The union of matter with the vital principle. Is the vital principle then present in a specific agent, or is it a property of organized matter? Simply put, is it an effect, or is it a cause? So is it the vital fluid that provides life, or is life that is, And the response is quite surprising because I wasn't actually expecting it, but it's both. Because the same way that matter cannot be alive without the vital fluid, the vital fluid alone is not life itself. Life is an effect produced by an agent acting on matter. Without matter, the agent is not life, just as matter cannot be alive without the agent. It gives life to every being that absorbs it. Does the vital principle reside in any bodies that we know? Its source is the universal fluid, which is what you can call the magnetic or electric fluid, only animalized. It is, again, go back and say, is the link between spirit and matter. Okay? So it's a transformation of the universal fluid. So far we have talked about matter. Now let's talk about spirit. So what is spirit? Well, how can we define spirit? And this superior spirit is defined as the intelligent principle of the universe. Very similar to the definition of God, which is the supreme intelligence of the universe, right? So we are actually the intelligent principle. And then the next follow-up and natural question is, what is the nature of this intelligent principle, right, of the spirit? And the response is, well, for now, the nature of your language in your evolutionary state, you're not capable of properly defining the spirit. It is nothing to you because it's not tangible, but for us, it's something. Remember this, nothingness does not exist. There's always, this concept of nada, of nothingness, is source, right? There's always something either being a spiritual being or matter, even in the dark corners of space where you think there's nothing there. Science is now showing us that there is some other type of matter called dark matter that's actually filling up most of the universe actually. Is the spirit independent of matter, or is only a property, as colors are properties of light and sounds are properties of the air? They are distinct from one another, but the union of the spirit and matter is crucial to give intelligent activity to matter. Intelligent is the key point, because matter can have activity on its own. If you heat up the floor, the air will go up because it's a property of the matter itself. But to give intelligent activity to matter, you need an intelligent principle, which is the soul or the spirit. Is this union also necessary for the manifestation of the spirit? For you, yes, because your physical makeup is not designed to perceive the spirit apart from matter. Your senses are not designed for that. And then comes the question where we're talking about the chicken or the egg, right? Do spirits have a beginning or birth, or have they existed for all eternity like God? If spirits did not have a beginning, they would be equal to God, but they are God's creation and subject to divine will. It is indisputable that God is eternal, but we know nothing in regards to when and how we were created. In this sense, we have no beginning. Since God is eternal, the Creator must have been unceasingly created. As to when and how each of us was made, no one knows. This is a mystery. And that's touched to the point of the difference between being eternal and being immortal, right? God is eternal. He has always been, and He always will be. There's no beginning, there's no end. But He created us at some point of time, and from that point on, we are immortal. We have no finish, no end. But we had a beginning. The problem is, since He is eternal, and He's been creating spirits like matter all the time, spirits in general, in that sense, the spirits are eternal, because they have been being created ever since. But each one, if you look at individually, each one of us has a beginning, a point in which we are created. We don't know when, we don't know how, right? But from that point on, we go and are immortal spirits. And then, the next question is, since there are two general elements in the universe, the intelligent element and the material element, is it correct to say that spirits are formed from the intelligent elements, as inert bodies are formed from the material elements, right? Obviously, spirits are the embodiments of the intelligent principle, as physical bodies are the embodiments of the material principle. It is the time and mode of this formation that are unknown to us. So we go back to that question 27, right, where I talked about matter, we talked about spirit, and the question says, so there are two general elements of universe, matter and spirit, yes. and above them all, God, the creator, parent of all things. God, matter, and spirit constitute the principle of all that exists, the universal Trinity. But the response doesn't stop there. The spirits continue. However, the universal fluid must be added to the material elements, as it acts as an intermediary between spirit and regular matter. As this matter, the regular matter, is too crude for the spirit to be able to act directly upon it. So the regular matter and the spirits, they're so different that there's no way the spirit can directly interact with the regular physical matter. It needs something in between. Although this universal fluid may be classified as part of the material element from another perspective, it is distinguished by certain properties. If it were simply classified as matter, there would be no reason why the spirit could not also be classified as matter. It is something placed between the spirit and matter. It is fluid, as just matter is material, and through countless combinations under the action of the spirit, it can produce an infinite variety of things of which you only know a very small portion. Without these universal and primitive elements, the agent employed by the spirit, matter will be permanently remain divided and it would never acquire the properties given by gravity. So now we have this third element, which is an intermediate between the spirit and matter. And the same way that we have transformations of the universal fluid that gives origin to that vital fluid, right? A certain transformation of the universal fluid gives origin to a type of fluid that we call the perispiritual fluid, or perispirit. The perispirit is the intermediate between, in our physical bodies, like our soul, and the physical matter. It is the link that unites our physical body, molecule by molecule, atom by atom, and allows us to interact with the physical matter that constitutes our own bodies. Then it becomes a little bit clearer. That phrase we had in the beginning is a small print, but on the question 22, when they ask what is matter, it says, it is the instrument that the spirit uses and upon which at the same time it acts. Right? Because the perispirit is matter and is the instrument that the spirit uses to act on matter itself. But this instrument is also material. So that's what that definition is referring to. So let's go back and see what we have discussed so far. Universal fluid is the source of all matter. It gives origin to the organic matter, inorganic matter, but it also, through some type of transformation, originates the vital fluids. The combination of those two gives the property of being alive, right? We also know that we have a spirit, but this spirit needs a physical body. But in order for the spirit to act on this physical body, we need a third piece here. We need a perispirit, which is an intermediate between the spirit and matter, right? So the question is, why do we need all this complication? Let's put all of that aside and think, why do we need this? What is the purpose of the spirit coming to the physical world? So if you think that there is two things, matter and spirit, you could didactically classify or divide the reality, the spirit world and the material world, the physical world, right? We are created as spirits. God creates us simple and ignorant with the purpose to evolve. Through countless experiences to acquire our knowledge, both on the intellectual and emotional or moral side. Part of those experiences need to happen on the physical world. So the spirit has to come to the physical world, and the process of coming, materializing, is called incarnation. The first one, the others are reincarnations, right? So in the physical world, the spirit needs to interact with the physical world, so it needs a physical body. But in order to have the spirit interact with its own physical body, it needs a perispirit, which is the intermediate, right? So we come here, our physical body is alive, infused with vital principle. We live our lives, whatever how many years they are, in the physical plane. And when we're done with this experience, and when the amount of vital fluid that is allotted to this physical body is extinguished, we go back to the spiritual life. And this process is called death, or disincarnation. But the spirit doesn't go back alone. It retains its perispiritual body, the body that uses to interact with the reality on the spiritual body. Why? Remember, that is also matter. All the things everything that is not a spirit, even the spiritual side, is also material. It's just so different, so subtle, that for us it's completely intangible, right? So it still needs the perispirit to interact with things and to interact with one another. Good so far? What are the properties of perispirit? Well, there are, and this is a very interesting book, if anyone has an opportunity to read, called Perispírito. It's not translated in English yet, it's available in Portuguese. There is like a treatise about the properties of perispirit and the perispirit itself. That comes from there. One of the properties is plasticity, which means it can take any shape or forms that the mind, the spirit wants. This density, each perispirit has its own density, and it changes through the degrees of evolution of the spirit. Ponderability, it has its own weight, and it can change depending on the states of condensation in the world where the spirit is. Luminosity, which is a very personal characteristic, and is proportional to the degree of evolution and moral qualities of the spirit. Penetrability, all that we know as regular matter, these walls, they mean nothing to the perispirit and to the spirit. They just penetrate, go through it. Visibility, it's normally invisible to us, but it can be made visible through condensation and transformations of that element. But for that, it usually needs another aspects like the ectoplasm, for instance, phenomena of materialization. Corporeity, because of its plasticity, it assumes whatever shape the spirit wants. So it takes the shape of the physical body, let's say per se, of the spirit, and functions at its physical body, right? Tangibility, it can be made tangible, you can touch it, and usually in combination with an ectoplasm in phenomena of materialization. Global sensitivity. In this physical body, we have 5 senses, and we can only perceive reality through those 5 senses. The perispirit perceives reality around it through its entirety. It doesn't see through specific eyes. Although you may see eyes in a perispirit, it doesn't see through those. It's just a form of the physical representation of the spirit. Magnetic sensibility is very important in the mediumistic process because it's a force field. It can interact with any other magnetic fields, particularly the psychomagnetic energy, what you call psychosphere. So in mediumistic process, when sometimes the spirit is giving a communication and you say something, but you have an impression completely different because you can sense the psychosphere of that spirit. And that's a property of the perispirit, both of the medium and of the spirit. Expansibility, albeit indivisible, the perispirit can expand greatly and amplify its area of action. Decorporeity, so it can kind of solidify and create a second body. If you are incarnated, for instance, my perispirit, and this is a very specific type of physical phenomena mediumship, in which a physical body can materialize in some other places, looking like I have 2 bodies, but it's really not. It's one physical and one spiritual. Unicity, being the reflect of the soul, each perispirit is unique. There's no 2 perispirits the same. They reflect our state of mind. They reflect our evolutionary process. Is everlasting, as the spirit is eternal, but at the same time is mutable, because as the spirit evolves, the quality and the composition of the perispirit also evolves. And it reflects our state of mind continuously. So even if we were trying to hide something from the mentors who are here trying to help us, they know instantly what we're thinking about and what our emotions are and what state of mind we are in, because it's clearly reflecting our perispirits. And spirits describe that they also have some sense of smell and temperature, and that can be perceived by the spirits who are on this kind of side. So what are the functions? There are 4 main functions of the there are many, but the 4 basic functions is: 1, we already been talking about this, is the instrument between the matter and the spirits. The primordial function is to serve as this intermediate for the spirit to interact with physical matter, right? But it is also individualized, the spirit. Because of this, it reflects the state of mind and the individuality of the spirit. It serves to unequivocally identify one spirit when communicating with it, when seeing or when talking with it. It serves as an organizing matrix, especially when incarnating. So the same way that you have, if you have a magnet and you throw iron filings, you're going to see the magnetic lines. The same way the cells on a physical body distribute uniformly on top of the molds of the perispiritual scaffold, cell by cell, atom by atom, guiding the formation of the spiritual, of the physical body. And that's why it's sometimes called the biological organizing template. And that's why it imprints on the physical body some deformities or qualities that are brought from past experiences and that are needed for the current incarnational process. And it also has the function of sustaining and maintaining us through our physical lives. In incarnates, the perispirit is infused with that vital fluid and gradually transfers it to the physical body, maintaining its vitality. It also maintains the integrity of the physical body through life, through constant renovation of ourselves. So you can think that we have the physical body and you have an exact copy of it as made of our perispiritual fluid. Actually, it's the opposite, right? The physical body is a copy, a physical copy of the perispiritual body. And so those are linked during the process of incarnation, atom by atom, cell by cell. And this linkage is stronger at some points. And the interaction and the exchange of energy happens more organized in some of these points. Those points are called vital centers or chakras. There are several of them, many of those, but there are 7 principal main chakras. These main power centers, right? They are physically located on the spiritual side, on top of some nervous plexus on the physical body, and they establish this structure through which the transmission of energy, spiritual and physical, are distributed to our physical body. So we have these are the representation of the 7 main chakras. The first one is on top of the head, the coronary chakra. It's fundamental to the spirit's maintenance and balance, and is a major receiving of spiritual energy. The frontal or cerebral chakra coordinates perception and the process of intelligence. It's located right in front of the frontal cortex in our head. Both of those have the focal point as being the pituitary gland in our brains. The third one is the laryngeal, right in front of our throat. It coordinates the vocal process, but also the action of some endocrinal glands like thymus, thyroid, and parathyroid glands. The cardiac chakra, in front of the cardiac plexus, controls emotions and general balance. And it also has a very important function on the distribution of energy between those 3 chakras on the top and the 3 on the bottom that deals with very different types of energy. Those with more spiritualized energy and those with more dense energy, like the energy that comes from the food and from the earth itself. Through the gastric chakra, which regulates the absorption of foods and fluids. The splenic one that coordinates distribution and circulation of vital resources through the blood and is located on top of the spleen. And the genesic chakra, which is the source of the sexual energy, the creative energy, generator of forms, and stimulates the association, execution, drivenness in us. So these are not all of them. These are the main ones, right? I don't know if we're almost out of time, but I just want to go through this example here. So imagine that I'm walking here, coming to the Spiritist Center, and I find a flower, right? I really like flowers, and I want to pick it up and smell it. So my brain gives the command, pick up that rose, right? So who is the person which of those 3 parts is the one that actually gives the commands? So to make it simpler, let's spread them apart and talk about the spirit, the perispirit, and the physical body, right? So who is the one who actually has the wish to pick up the rose? Is the spirit. Is a source of our individuality, is a source of our intelligence, right? That's the one who gives the command to pick up the rose. From there, through the interaction of the perispirit, because the spirit itself cannot pick up the rose, neither the perispirit, it will give a command to the physical body through the pituitary gland and through the nervous cells on the central nervous system to send an impulse to the muscles of my arm and go there and pick up the rose. I bring it to my nose and I smell it, and the smell is nothing more than the volatile chemicals in the flower that goes to my nostrils and stimulate receptors there. So do you think it's the physical body that actually smells? Well, that's the receptor. That's the one who initiates the process, but it's not the physical body who actually feels. That sensation is transmitted to the perispirit and back to the spirit. And the spirit is the one that actually enjoys the sense of smell, is the one who likes the flower, is the one who, the source of all the activity is here. So it makes it even easier for us to now understand that the matter, or the physical body, is the instrument that we use to act on matter, because the flower is also making matter. And through which it acts. Right? It's also an instrument, but it's also the object of the action. Is that clear? If we think that our spirit can interact with our physical body, it makes it totally possible that the perispirit of another spirit can also interact with our perispirit and therefore control our physical body. And that's the basis for the process of mediumicity. It's a separate topic we're going to cover in another day, but it's also through this action that this process takes place. I don't think we will have time to talk about ectoplasm today, but just suffice to say that it's also another type of fluid that's originated from the perispirit, elements from the superior plane, and from the nature itself, that when condensated can give form and appearance to spirits in sessions of materialization. These are very uncommon today. Those are phenomena of materialization that are not really common, and that had their reason to happen in the beginning of the codification of Spiritism, but today most of the mediumistic phenomena are intellectual in nature. So in summary, God creates both spirit and matter, but He also created the universal fluid, which permeates everything, is this, unites everything. Individualizations of the spiritual principle are called what we call spirits. Individualization of the material principle is what we call physical bodies or inorganic bodies. The universal fluid also gives origin to this type of agent, which is the vital fluid. Combined with inorganic matter, the vital fluid originates what we call life, the property of life. The vital fluid also creates this other type of fluid called perispirit, which in combination with a spirit or around the spirit constitutes what we call the disincarnated spirits. Right? So when we say spirit, we're not only talking about the actual principle, intelligent principle, we're talking about that and its accompanying perispirit, because it always retains its perispirit. And when that perispirit unites with organic matter, then we have ourselves, incarnated beings, or we call human beings. So from here, we are going to have expansion on these topics like mediumship and communicability, other worlds, but all of those are going to be for another time and another day. I think we don't have much time for questions, but after we finish the activities, I'm going to be here, and everyone feel free to stop by and ask some questions. Thank you. Okay. Yeah.